He's been a leading voice in America's conservative movements, and with his latest work, he claims that the Democratic left, not Donald Trump, are the real fascists in the United States. He's a best-selling author and documentary maker, Dinesh D'Souza. His newest book, and I have it right here, is entitled The Big Lie, Exposing the Nazi Roots of the American Left. Thanks for joining us, Dinesh. We'll get to the book in a little while. What do you make of the current shakeup at the White House?
Well, I think that it's a reflection of the fact that Trump is an outsider. He's coming from a space that's kind of remote from normal politics. I expected there to be some convulsions, and sure enough, we're seeing a little bit of convulsion, a little bit of chaos, but that doesn't mean that important things are not being accomplished at the same time.
Like?
Well, I think the most important thing is the fact that, at least from my point of view, Trump essentially saved the Supreme Court. If you remember, Supreme Court nominations were very traumatic for Bush. They were difficult for Reagan. Reagan couldn't get the Bork nomination through. Trump handled the Gorsuch nomination with supreme aplomb. So on a really important issue, the president has, in the very beginning of his administration, come through in a very substantive and lasting way.
But that was a year after Republicans blocked a nominee who was chosen by the previous president with a year to go in his term. That wasn't fair, was it?
Look, I think the problem here is that the Supreme Court, I think, has been regrettably become a political football. When an issue comes up before the court now, the Democratic left can count with Euclidean certitude on its own 4 members voting its way. And so this has gone a long way from the idea that the justices are sort of removed from politics. They look at the Constitution. They look to see if a law matches with the constitutional text. Unfortunately, the Democrats want to nominate Democrats and the Republicans want to nominate Republicans. It's become a contest of power.
So it's either party's at fault there, right?
Yes, I think there's a lot of blame on both sides.
Okay. Jeb Bush described Donald Trump as a chaos candidate when they were running in the primaries. You must admit that this chaos is a pretty good word to describe the first 6 months.
I agree that there's been a good deal of chaos, certainly in terms of personnel. I understand that there are large areas of the government that haven't really been populated with confirmed nominees. And look, I think that this is an abnormal time in American politics, and Donald Trump is the result of that. He hasn't actually caused the abnormality. It's that Republicans looked around and said, basically, look, we tried a guy like Romney. We tried a guy like McCain. These were respectable guys from the center of the party, and they were turned by the other side into Lucifer. Romney, for making a buck, was made to seem like some kind of corrupt plutocrat. Well, Trump has even more money than Romney, but you can't accuse him of being wealthy because then he tells you he's even wealthier. So the Republicans basically decided we need a tough guy to stand up to the kind of attacks that our candidates get from the left. That's how we got Trump.
Do you consider this, Dinesh, on no matter what side you're on, a low point in American politics?
Well, I think that we are in a low point in American politics, but it really began earlier with Obama. In other words, if I look at the Obama-Hillary period of politics, it's very different from the old Democrats, and I would even include Bill Clinton in that list. Truman, JFK, even Jimmy Carter, for all his failings, were a different breed of Democrats. So American politics, when I came to America at the age of 17 in the late 70s, American politics was more of a gentleman's game, and even the media reflected that. Look, would Walter Cronkite put up with the kind of thing that passes for journalism today? By and large, you had news on the news page and opinion on the editorial page. But now when I open the New York Times page 1, I feel like I'm reading a nonstop rant against Trump. The distinction between the news page and the op-ed page is completely dissolved.
And then on the other hand, we have Fox News.
Right, but remember that Fox News was a response to the fact that not only the mainstream channels, but all the cable channels had become thoroughly politicized. In effect, Roger Ailes said, listen, we've got MSNBC on the left, we've got CNN out there, there's going to be a market for right-wing news. And so I would much rather have seen mainstream channels that are open to genuine debate from both sides, but that's not the America we live in now.
What went wrong with the health care bill?
I think what went wrong with the health care bill is that the Republicans did not actually expect Hillary to lose. I didn't expect Hillary to lose. And so they really didn't do the kind of work, not only the intellectual work, but also the political work of solidifying their majority and realizing, listen, we actually are going to have an opportunity to redo this whole healthcare thing, which admittedly hasn't worked out all that well. And so the Republicans were caught unprepared.
But remember, Trump said that repealing and replacing would be so easy. It'll be done 1, 2, 3, no problem. That was
I don't think
true.
that's right. And I think in a way you could say that Trump maybe did not anticipate that when you have a federal program, any program, particularly a program that's offering people subsidies, it's giving people benefits, and then you're going to try to redesign the program that in some ways will take away at least some of those benefits. That's never going to be easy.
Well, a lot of it comes down to concept. Do you feel, and we'll be getting to your book shortly, do you feel health is a right?
I feel that health is a right in the same sense that food is a right. Larry, we have a right to eat, right? But can you imagine if the government declared that you could go to your local Vons or Safeway, you can get as much food as you want, and when you go up to the counter, you don't have to pay, some third guy would pay. Now, if that happens, think of what would occur. First of all, you would overstock your cart. Second of all, the people who run Vons and Safeway would say, listen, I know that Larry isn't paying. I'm going to increase the price of milk from $2 to $25. Because Larry's not going to care. So you can see that once you get away from the simple accountability of one guy receiving a service and paying for it, you corrupt the whole system and allow all kinds of unintended consequences to take effect.
But we do have food stamps for people who can't afford to buy food, because you certainly don't want to see anyone starve.
Right, and if Obama had said, listen, there are a bunch of people who are needy, they're below the poverty line, and they don't have health care insurance, I'm going to give them health care insurance, that would be a completely different debate than the government trying to take over 1/6 of the whole economy and force perfectly healthy people who are young, who don't want to buy health insurance, to make them buy it.
Donald recently said that with the exception of the late Abraham Lincoln, he can be more presidential than any president that's ever held the office. What are your thoughts about the personality of my friend Donald, who I know for 35 years?
Well, look, certainly if one were to look at the people who have occupied the Oval Office, Donald Trump is an outlier. He doesn't have the same temperament as most of the Republicans or Democrats who have occupied the presidency. He is unusually flamboyant. He's brash. He, in that sense, is the kind of person who normally wouldn't even be in politics. So his very success, the very fact that he was able not only to win the presidency, but to beat Hillary in traditionally Democratic territory, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, shows you that there is a hunger in the country for throwing out the rules and trying something new.
Dinesh, I know how controversial you can be, but it's always great having you with us. You recently said about John McCain, who voted no on skinny Obamacare. In June, you tweeted that McCain's captivity by leftist thugs in Vietnam was involuntary. His captivity by leftist thugs in the media today is, alas, voluntary. You think that John McCain is a victim of leftist thugs in the media?
Well, let's put it this way, Larry. Here's the anomaly, and I admit that I was playing off the voluntary involuntary thing. Now, Meghan McCain, his daughter, was very upset with me because she thought I was somehow making light of his captivity, and I certainly wasn't. I didn't say anything negative about that at all. Here's the point I'm trying to make. John McCain actually actively campaigned for re-election on the idea that he was going to undo Obamacare, that he was going to lead the fight against it. So can you imagine you've got a whole bunch of Arizonans voting for this guy, entrusting him with carrying out, if you will, their wishes, their values. He is elected on that platform, and then when the day comes, he turns on them. So this is a bitter slap in the face, you might say, and he's doing it on his own. So I say that if he's not captive to the voters, that's for sure. Who is he captive to? He's getting accolades from the media, from Schumer. It looks to me like their accolades were more important to him than the affirmation of the people who voted for him.
But frankly, the plan did not overthrow Obamacare.
No, I agree, but I think the Republicans, having failed to sort of chop off the whole thing at the knees, were trying to lop it off one piece at a time. Look, I'm not approving the strategy. I'm simply saying that sometimes half a loaf is better than no loaf at all.
Why do you think, among all the nations of the world, we have such a difficulty with health care? I mean, you can look at the European system and say it's single pay, you don't like it, but they're not. Their lifespan is the same as ours. We don't have the highest health rate in the world. Our infant mortality is 17th. Why can't we get a hold of health care?
Well, America is a little different society than Europe. On the one hand, European society has more security, but they have less mobility and they have less opportunity. By and large, if you meet a rich guy in Europe, it's a fair bet that he or she comes from a rich family. Of course, you have success stories, but they're kind of rare, and that's why people talk about them in France or in England, for example. In America, we don't even count success stories because they're just so numerous. And so I agree, a society is going to make a certain trade-off between security, by which I mean having your retirement paid for, your health care paid for, your maternity care paid for. There's a trade-off between all that on the one hand and having a very versatile, entrepreneurial, open society. It's no accident, for example, that most of the innovations and inventions occur here in America, not in Europe.
So it's survival of the fittest.
No, not really. I mean, if you think of the whole technological revolution that's made so many people's lives better. I mean, a cell phone doesn't just make, Steve Jobs' life better. It makes small entrepreneurs all over the world, including in Calcutta and Bombay. They're able to do business in a way they couldn't before. Now, the impetus for creating that, you need an entrepreneurial society to get that kind of stuff. And I'm saying we do have that environment in this country. We should be careful not to disturb it.
As a conservative, how would you define Donald Trump's philosophy?
I think Trump's philosophy is a certain kind of very basic Americanism. And by Americanism, what I think he means is that this is an immigrant society. This is a society where people come to make a better life, just like me. They start off at the bottom of the ladder and they move up the ladder of opportunity. And I think Trump feels that we need to protect those ladders of opportunity. Now, he doesn't say it exactly that way. He'll use slogans like "Make America Great Again." But I think what he means is that there was an American dream that most Americans could count on. They can't count on it anymore. He's trying to give it back to them.
One of the big concepts of Nazism was nationalism. Deutschland über alles. Germany is better than other countries. Aryan is better. That's the opposite of the left in America.
Well, it is true that nationalism was one of the features, as you say, of Nazism and of fascism generally. But just remember that nationalism is much broader than that. I come from India. Gandhi was a nationalist. Nelson Mandela was a ferocious nationalist who was very attached to South Africa. Fidel Castro was a nationalist. Che Guevara was most of the anti-colonial leaders were nationalists. Stalin was a nationalist who celebrated what he called Mother Russia. So if nationalism equals fascism, all these people would be fascists, which they clearly weren't.
So you can't be a nationalist on the left and a nationalist on the right.
Absolutely, and I don't think it's nationalism that's what makes the left today fascist. What makes the left fascist is that when I go out to speak on the campus, I will see masked protesters wearing black outfits, carrying weapons, who drive dissenting conservative speakers off the campus. These are people who are ready to use intimidation and force to prevent a point of view from being aired that is never aired on the campus. And now they call themselves anti-fascist, Larry, but to me they resemble Mussolini's black shirts or Hitler's brown shirts. They look like them, they talk like them, they act like them, and so therefore I conclude that these people in the name of anti-fascism are actually using fascist tactics.
But they don't win out. We have a vibrant left and a vibrant right in America, and you're not going to call Chuck Schumer a fascist.
No, but I think that the ideology and the economic policy of fascism has always been on the left. Let's remember that Hitler was a National Socialist. He changed the name of the German Workers' Party to the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Mussolini was a Marxist and a lifelong socialist. So this whole concept that fascism somehow comes from the right is very misleading. Fascism is the ideology of the centralized state.
You're saying Mussolini was a left-winger?
I'm saying not only was Mussolini a left-winger, but Mussolini considered himself a left-winger. Even the people who criticized Mussolini called him a left-winger. When Mussolini did his march on Rome in 1922, Lenin sent him a letter, a telegram of congratulations. Why? Because Lenin understood that Mussolini was a fellow revolutionary of the left.
But wasn't Hitler and Mussolini violent opponents of communism?
Yes, they were, but let's remember that sometimes ideologies that are quite similar get into very bitter fights. Remember, Larry, the Catholics and the Protestants fought bitterly, even though they are both within the house of Christendom. The Shia and the Sunni will go and fight bitter battles, even though they're both within the house of Islam. So sometimes you can be on the same side of the aisle, but fight over power or minor doctrinal differences. Nevertheless, the fact that Nazism and fascism and socialism went to war does not mean that they don't have a lot in common.
Where do you think it's all going, Dinesh?
Well, I would like to see, my last chapter is called Denazification, and what I mean is that I long for the kind of healthy democratic politics in which people don't regard each other as enemies, they don't have to carry weapons, they have arguments, so they don't have to come to blows. I actually yearn for the kind of America in which Donald Trump is actually not even necessary.
Dinesh, always good talking with you. Thank you so much. Dinesh D'Souza, the book is The Big Lie, Exposing the Nazi Roots of the American Left. It's out now and available everywhere, including for downloads.